Is after this weekend when number 3 Michigan travels to number 2 Ohio State on Saturday. Also number 1 Alabama hosts number 13 Auburn, and number 4 Clemson hosts South Carolina. Skip, when it's all said and done, which 4 teams will make the college football playoff?
Great question. Shannon Sharp.
Yep.
This is not what I think. This is what I believe the committee will ultimately decide December 4th, the final 4, if you will. I believe the committee will go with Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, and Wisconsin. Did I shock you with that, or is that exactly what you asked?
That's exactly.
Okay. That's yours?
Yes.
All right, well, we can discuss that. Okay, so my rationale is we'll have a semifinal of Alabama versus Wisconsin, and we'll have another semifinal of Ohio State versus Clemson.
Yep.
To get there, this will happen. Obviously, I think Ohio State will beat Michigan without its starting quarterback, Wilton Speight.
Yep.
I was poised and ready, as I've told you for a couple, 3 weeks here on the show. I was going to pick Jim Harbaugh's team at Ohio State, but they can't do it without their starting quarterback because John O'Korn, the backup, last week was pretty disastrous.
Okay.
Had a rough ride, and I just don't think they can win without Wilton Speight. That means Penn State will play, I believe, Wisconsin. Wisconsin has to beat Minnesota, but I think they will. So Penn State will play Wisconsin for the Big Ten championship, and I believe that Wisconsin will win what most people have believed all year long is the toughest conference in America.
Yep.
And so that means that 2-loss Wisconsin is going to get a Final Four berth because I'd remind everybody, Wisconsin, it was at home, but took Ohio State into overtime, lost 30-23, and then Wisconsin at Michigan with Wilton Speight at quarterback lost only 14-7. That's a pretty impressive resume, and that's worthy of being in the Final Four.
Yep.
Next, I believe that Washington State will upset Washington this Friday, right? It's this Friday. Is that's
Cup.
on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Fox
That's the game that Joel
Klatt's going to. Yeah. Okay. Which means that will eliminate the Huskies from consideration and also will eliminate the Pac-12 from consideration because that will mean that 2-loss Colorado would play 3-loss Washington State for that conference title.
Right.
And I believe Colorado will win it, but having lost 45-28 at Michigan and having lost at USC, 21-17, I just don't think Colorado is going to rate enough consideration to move into the Final Four. So they will be out. So that means we'll have 1 loss Ohio State. I'm good with that. And 1 loss Clemson. I'm kind of good with that in the Final Four. But now to sum it up, and this is where we may disagree, if I'm going on my eye test right here, right now, I'll still go Alabama and Ohio State. But I hate to say it, I'm going to throw in Bob Stoops Sooners, and I'm going to throw in USC. Those are the 4 teams right now I think are the best right now. But clearly, USC, without Sam Darnold starting, although he did start the 3rd game, but they lost 3 games early. They got run out of the building, out of Jerry World by Alabama. Roll Tide, as you always say.
St. Nick.
You give me one. Just give me one. A slow one.
You know St. Nick.
Yeah. Ain't Nick sometimes.
You're the only one that calls him that.
Yeah.
Everybody call him that in Alabama.
But that was 52-6, and then
How many did Alabama beat USC?
52-6.
Oh.
Okay, but that was without Sam Darnold at quarterback when Max Brown was playing quarterback.
They could have had Carson Palmer at quarterback.
I don't know about that. I think
know
Sam
about that.
Darnold would have made a difference, especially if he had a little bit of experience, but he would have none at that point.
52-14.
Okay, so then they go up to Stanford and lose 27-10 without Sam Darnold, and Sam Darnold started at Utah, tough place to have your first start in college football. And they hung in and lost 31-27. Then they caught fire. And we know what happened the rest of the year. My Sooners, of course, opened up in Houston against Houston and lost 33-23, which was just a disgrace and a shame for that team. And then got blown off this home field in a night game in Norman, Oklahoma, 45-24 by Ohio State. Another shameful loss. So 2 losses have disqualified a Bob Stoops team that has caught fire the way nobody has on offense. It's the best offense in college football. It's virtually unstoppable. Baker Mayfield to D.D. Westbrook and the 2 big backs crashing through the middle of the line. They're impossible to stop, but they stopped themselves in the first 2 games, so they're out. So I have to settle on the Final Four that the committee will give us.
We got the exact same because I have Alabama beating Auburn in the Iron Bowl, then going on to beat Florida in the SEC Championship. They will be number 1. I have Ohio State beating Michigan on Saturday. And although they will not advance, because I believe Penn State will also beat Michigan State, they will not advance to the Big Ten championship. But when you have road wins over Oklahoma, over Wisconsin, beat Nebraska, beat number 3 Michigan, that's enough. Even though you don't make the conference championship in your own division, I think Michigan's going to be out, Skip, because you can't lose 2 games in the last 3 weeks and make the playoffs. That's not going to happen. I got Clemson. They're at home at South Carolina this week, and they're going to play either Virginia or North Carolina in the ACC championship. I believe they win that game. They will be the number 3 seed. And then the 4 was really interesting because I had Washington, Wisconsin, Penn State, Oklahoma, and Colorado, as you did. I have with Washington State upsetting Washington in the Apple Cup, knocking them out. That'll be 2 losses in the last 3 weeks. They're done. Now you get Wisconsin will beat Minnesota in the Paul. I think they play for the Paul Bunyan Act or something. Acts they play for. Penn State will beat Michigan State. And now you get Wisconsin and Penn State for the Big Ten championship. I believe Wisconsin will beat Penn State.
So do I.
And with 2 losses, with that resume, beating Penn State, I like them. Now, LSU, they beat LSU early on a neutral site. That doesn't seem that big now because LSU is kind of taking a nosedive, but I think their body of work speaks for itself. Oklahoma does have an interesting case because they've caught fire lately. And looking at their defense, I mean, their offense, they are unstoppable. But, Skip, they can't stop a parked car.
They cannot.
I mean, how?
I will agree.
I still can't figure this out, Skip. They allow one guy to have 24 carries for 331 yards, and they still won the game by 28 points. I still don't understand how they did that, but I digress. But when you look at, I'm taking Wisconsin over Oklahoma because they both lost to Ohio State. Wisconsin took into overtime.
It was an annihilation.
Yeah, and the Sooners lost by 21. That's good enough for me. Colorado, I can't wrap I just, for whatever reason, I can't get my arms around Colorado. I think they do beat Utah, and I think they'll beat Washington State in the Pac-12 title game, but I just can't. And so now you're going to have a 2-loss team that makes the playoff. So you either have a 2-loss Wisconsin, Oklahoma, or Colorado. And with their body of work, Wisconsin, I think they're going to take a Big Ten champion. Oklahoma hurt their own case. They refused to have a play game, Skip. You have, if you're a Power 5 school, you have to have that, Skip, because it's not fair that all these other conferences, the SEC, the ACC, the Big Ten, the Pac-12, have those, and you get to sit back, let them chop each other up, hope Florida knocks off Alabama, hope this happens, and then you just sit pretty, because that's exactly what happened last year.
It was.
It's not fair to them, and so I think the committee should punish them until they decide to play a conference championship game. Nobody from this conference, unless they go undefeated, should be allowed to play in the playoffs. And so that's what I have. I have Bama at 1, Ohio State at 2, Clemson at 3, Wisconsin at 4.
And what is your eye test Final Four? Right here, right now. If you had to pick the 4 best teams in your view, they would be?
Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Clemson 3, Oklahoma 4.
Would you really?
Yes.
And so you gave up on Louisville because you have loved Lamar Jackson. And it's a talented football team.
Well, I think the main attraction with Louisville is him because he's going to win the Heisman. But when you look at everything else, I mean, their body of work is really not that impressive. Yeah, they beat Florida State, but that's really the only win that you can say, you know what, that was really impressive. Now, Florida State is I think they're 17th now. But that's really the only win. I mean, you can't go get beat on national television like they got beat that Thursday night.
Yeah.
And so
at Houston,
Houston, they're done. They're done in my book. And the committee thinks so too because they dropped them from 5th all the way down to 11th. So there's no coming back from that. And so with all that, I think Bama, or Ohio State, Clemson, and Wisconsin. But if I had, I would bump Wisconsin out and I'll put Oklahoma in because I think their offense is so dynamic, would cause people some problems.
So you know what I think of Bob Stoops. Like him very much personally, think his time has come and passed at the University of Oklahoma. Big game boob, as I call him, too regularly. And yet, year after year, he has managed to back into both championship games and Final Fours.
Right.
And then get humiliated on a bigger national stage. And it's still got a long shot chance of happening this year. And I'm afraid of it, actually.
Yeah. But let me ask you a question. Let's just say for the sake of argument, it stands the way and it goes according to the way you and I think it'll go. Bama, OSU, Clemson, and Wisconsin. Who do you think plays in the national championship game and who wins?
I cannot make a case. It's going to be Ohio State and Alabama. I need to think about Ohio State, but right now JT Barrett is not playing at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
He was for a while, and he did against Nebraska, because that might be the most singly impressive, one game show that I've seen any team put on all year, because it was a wipeout. And JT Barrett was great at Norman, Oklahoma against my Sooners, but he's been up and down, and he would have to be way up for this team to be able to score on that defense.
And his floor is really, really low.
It is.
I mean, he has a high ceiling,
Yep.
but that floor, that's not a floor. That's a basement. I mean, he can go. Last week, he really didn't do a whole lot. If this were to happen, and all these teams, and Bama, OSU, Clemson, Wisconsin, I don't think any of these teams can beat Alabama on a neutral field, Skip. I just don't see it.
The only thing that could happen that would be highly fascinating would be if Deshaun Watson finally gets himself back together, which he has struggled to do all year, because it's back to your expectations. He was having a hard time from the start. He talked about living up to the Heisman expectations. If he could get himself back together enough to beat JT Barrett in the semifinal under our bracket, then the rematch with Alabama, against which he threw, I had the stat yesterday, what was it, like 450 yards or whatever? Yeah, he had like
470, 480 yards of total offense. He threw for 400 and over 400, and he ran for another.
That could be a show.
Yeah. But and so then Alabama would have a chance to do something that Clemson was trying to do last year.
Yep.
Be the first college team to go 15-0 in a calendar season. I just don't see it. I mean, I'm looking at these teams. I'm looking at if everybody played their absolute best. Do you think one of these teams, if Bama plays their best, Clemson plays their best, Wisconsin plays their best, Ohio State plays their best, do you think there's a team that could beat Alabama?
USC. That's the truth. No, that's what I think right now. I do think that.
Skip. You know good. First of all,
just for box office, I want to see USC and Alabama for the championship. Right now, I do.
Jalen Hurts was 3 months removed from high school and did this to USC. What would he do? A season bet now with 3 months of big games and big life.
USC's Jalen Hurts had to stand on the sideline and watch that whole thing unfold, right? Sam Darnold.
St. Nick still got that D down in Tuscaloosa. Skip.
Got it.
He got a spanker down there.
Yeah.
He is.
We went over the defense yesterday, remember?
I love how Skip cherry picks.
Chad Kelly, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions.
He cherry picked 12 games. Now, if all that happened in one season,
if it was St. Nick, I couldn't cherry pick one game over 4 years. You know that, and I know it. I got 12.
Hold on, Skip. So let me get this right. If you take all-time great defenses, they never had off games. Because the 2000 Ravens gave up 37 points to the Jags.
Okay.
But we won.
Jim Harbaugh has the #1 defense this year. Cherry pick one game. Show me where they got torched.
Who they beat?
Huh? Well, show me. They were playing the best conference in America, the Big Ten.
They lost to Iowa.
Show me one.
They lost to Iowa.
Show me one.
They lost to Iowa.
Low score. Low score. They lost their quarterback with 4 minutes to go, or they would have won.
So what you think St. Nick going to do to him if he plays St. Nick? If Iowa put their quarterback out, what do you think that Alabama defense going to do?
You know what? That game might be 6-3.
I guarantee you, if Alabama would have played Michigan, they beat them by 4 touchdowns.
By 4 touchdowns?
4 touchdowns.
Yeah, it's easy for you to say now that you know Michigan's out with no quarterback.
All I know is saying, hey, 5 and 8 years. That's all we're going to know, Skip.
Yeah, ain't Nick.
Ooh, I'm going to be rolling.
The Washington game you mentioned earlier is Washington is on Friday on Fox, and on Saturday it's Colorado and Utah.
Fox.
On Fox,
okay.
Yes. Coming up, will the Lakers or the Knicks make the playoffs? Skip and Shannon debate that next.